She stood alone near gate 14, gripping the handle of her small floral suitcase, her eyes darting from the digital screen overhead to the sea of travelers bustling past her. Margaret Hall had always been punctual, respectful, and rarely asked anyone for anything. That's what 35 years of teaching had shaped in her: a quiet discipline and a tendency to expect nothing, but give everything. Today, however, on the eve of her retirement, she had expected something: a ride, a promise, her own daughter. Just last night, over a short phone call, her only child had promised to pick her up at the airport after her celebratory trip to see an old friend in Maine. Of course, Mom, I'll be there. You're not taking a taxi, no way. You've given your whole life to others. It's time we give something back. But the gate was empty now, and Margaret had been standing there for 2 hours. Calls went straight to voicemail. Texts were read, but never answered. Her daughter, busy with work, with life, with a new boyfriend, maybe had simply not shown up. She slowly sat on a cold metal bench, shoulders sagging under the weight of more than just disappointment. Her scarf, a birthday gift from a student 20 years ago, fluttered as a breeze from the automatic doors hit her. It carried the scent of roasted coffee, jet fuel, and the sharp loneliness of being forgotten. "Ma'am, are you all right?" The voice was gentle, but unfamiliar. She looked up. Standing before her was a man in his late 30s, perhaps early 40s. His uniform was clean, but a little frayed at the edges, the tie loose as if it had seen too many takeoffs and landings in one day. His name tag read C.J. Morgan. His eyes were the kind that noticed things. Most people didn't like the tremble in her hands and the red swelling in her eyes. "Oh, yes," Margaret lied softly, straightening her back. "Just waiting for someone," his brow furrowed, a sympathetic smile tugging at his lips. "If it's been more than an hour, I'd say they've either gotten stuck in traffic, or forgotten you completely." It was blunt, but not unkind. Margaret chuckled bitterly. Perhaps the second. CJ sat down beside her, not too close, not too far. He stretched his legs and sighed. "My mom was a teacher," he said after a moment. "7th grade, English. Retired the year before she passed. I taught English to Margaret," replied, her eyes softening. "Then you probably taught 100 kids like me, always reading comic books under the desk, never turning in homework on time." "I taught kids like you," she smiled, "and I remember every single one." Silence hung between them, not awkward, just thoughtful. The kind of silence that felt like two strangers trying to remember how to speak to someone who still listens. He said, standing up, "I've got a little single-prop Cessna out back. I was about to fly it down to a nearby regional hangar anyway. Want a ride? I can take you wherever you're headed in, lest you have someone finally on the way." She hesitated. "You'd really do that for a stranger?" CJ shrugged. "You were a teacher. That means you're not a stranger to anyone. And besides, I've got no one waiting for me either." They walked toward the small side gate of the airport together. She moved slower than she used to, but he matched her step without making a show of it. The plane was modest, worn like its owner, but well kept. As she climbed inside, the wind carried a fresh scent of clouds and something else, a feeling Margaret had not known in years. Freedom, hope. He offered her headphones, buckled. And they were in the air within minutes. As the city lights grew small beneath them, Margaret looked at him from the corner of her eye. "So," she asked over the radio, "what's a nice young pilot doing all alone?" CJ chuckled. "Got divorced 2 years ago. Lost my dad last year. Mom's gone. Like I said, I've got a dog, but she can't fly. So, it's just me. No siblings, only child. Kinda like your daughter, I guess." That stung more than he knew. But she only nodded. "Double quotes, sometimes," she said, staring out the window. "We teach our children everything except how to love us back." He glanced at her, lips parting to say something, then stopping. The plane leveled. They flew in silence for a while, passing over golden fields and sleeping towns. It was peaceful, grounding, a temporary escape from a world that had gotten too fast, too loud. "You know," he finally said, "I've been thinking of leaving all this, flying. No, the loneliness. Maybe find a quiet place, start a little flight school. Something personal, something real. I don't know, ... That doesn't sound lonely," she said softly. He glanced at her again, this time holding her gaze longer. "It wouldn't be, not if someone like you was there." Her cheeks flushed silly at her age, but not foolish. just warm. They landed at a small rural airstrip just outside the town she lived in. He walked her to the gate, carried her bag. Before he turned back to his plane, he paused. "Margaret," he said, "I don't usually ask this, but can I? See you again? I'd like to hear more about your students. Maybe cook you something. Tuma lasagna is not bad." She smiled wider than she had in years. "Only if you let me bring dessert." He nodded. "It's a deal." Weeks passed. One dinner turned into several. Then long walks, quiet evenings, shared stories. And slowly, the years between them didn't matter. What mattered was how they listened to each other. How they made space for forgotten dreams. How he held her hand like it was an honor, not a habit. Margaret, the teacher, who had always given and never asked, had finally found someone who offered her more than love. He offered her presence, peace, and partnership. And somewhere, high, above the clouds, she remembered the moment she'd been left behind at the airport, not with sorrow, but gratitude, because being left behind had led her exactly where she needed to be.